Hello and welcome to Eat Your Greens. I'm John.
And I'm Christopher.
Anyway, hey Christopher.
Hey.
Do you eat your greens?
Sometimes.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Anyway, so today our VeggieTales episode will be Dave and the Giant Pickle.
A classic. Why? Because it introduced one of Larry's most popular characters ever.
Larry boy. Yes.
Did you actually know that they weren't planning to make it a continuous thing? That was just going to be a one-time thing?
I mean, I kind of... Just by watching this, it's like seeing how things go. Because Larry boy does come in later down the line. I do think that this was just like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's like
the fans wanted it.
We have this model.
Yeah.
Why not just continue to use it? But
well,
yeah.
What I heard is that like the fans loved it so much that
of course,
like, yeah.
I mean, I love Larry Boy. He was one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
I used to have toys of Larry Boy, like a plush, and then just a hard figure with removable ear sockets.
Really? That's fun.
It was fun.
That's fun.
So anyway,
So Larry was wearing the Larry Boy suit because he was feeling insecure that he wasn't important enough and that he felt like he needed a suit. So Bob starts to tell Larry a story. So you think about it, we actually have no letter this time.
we do.
We didn't.
Myra.
As I was saying, we just got a letter from Myra Eggleston of Youngstown, Pennsylvania.
Oh, we did. I have bad memory. But it just seemed like Bob was just telling the story to Larry so much.
Yeah, I mean, that
the letter was completely forgotten at the end.
Yeah, it was a message for Larry as well as Moira.
Oh, okay. I totally missed that. Okay, because they didn't mention Myra at all at the end.
They did.
They did?
They did.
And Myra, I hope that makes you feel pretty special, too.
Anyway, so he tells the story of Dave, or in biblical terms, David.
I'm so bad at this.
Yeah, and so he tells the story of Dave. He's the smallest of all his brothers, which I don't believe that was accurate in the biblical times. I believe in the biblical story, he was the youngest of his brothers.
Wait, no, Sorry, what? He was the youngest.
He was the youngest, but he wasn't the smallest.
Well, but he was also...
Like, in this story, he's, like, tiny. But, like...
But also, so, like, the thing is, like, when David's father, was it Samuel?
Jesse,
you're right. Oh, my gosh. Was, showing his sons to Samuel, the prophet Samuel.
Yeah.
And like it seemed like some of the older sons thought that they would be king based upon their heights or looks. And so, true, it does not necessarily mean that David was the smallest straight up, but also it did seem like there was so much more physical emphasis placed on the older brothers. So at the end of the day, David was kind of seen as inferior, probably just because of age, but also potentially even like physical attraction.
well, maybe not. I don't know, but he was very strong.
He was
because he's
maybe
very,
it was more about the age than the physical attraction.
Because like he was very handy with his.
There's one
slingshot.
other.
He kills bears and lions. Does he like?
True.
No, that's Samson.
You know what's my issue is sometimes. From some of these stories, you start to like get impressions from like revisions, like retelling. So that's actually what I was thinking of. There was one thing where it was like a heavy emphasis on like the attraction. So maybe, gosh, I'm a freaking heathen.
Yeah, revisions I think are fun for kids stories, but then you get to a point where it's like, wait,
you have to know what it is.
Is that not the actual story? Because David is actually a very formidable person fighting off bears just to protect his sheep.
You're right. So kids, stop watching. No, not kids. No. So adults, stop it.
Shush. But anyway, we had word that the Philistines are attacking, and they make this joke. It's like, oh, like who's? And then I thought
you thought Philippines
because they're making the joke. It's like, oh, they can't hear what he said. And I'm like,
the lima beans are cracking.
I jokingly said, oh, the Philippines, and then.
Larry says it.
He says the same thing. He's like, oh, so what is the Philippines? Oh, they're just islands off of the coast of the sunset. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that came did the same joke.
They did the same joke.
But then, the brothers, they go off and they show off the other side. the Philistines, and they're French because they're a bunch of peas.
It's too funny.
Too funny.
Champignon.
And so then they have a joke about fried chicken, which is interesting because they're vegetables. But we're also introduced here to the character of Saul, which...
You think about it, like, Archibald likes playing royalty.
I don't agree with their casting for Saul.
Oh, really? Who do you think should have done it?
I don't know, like, of the VeggieTales, but of our VeggieTale characters, but Saul is actually a very formidable warrior. Like, God chose, like, one of their best warriors to be the king, because, you know, that's what the people wanted. Like, a great king. Instead of them just trusting God, it's like, fine, you have your king.
Yeah.
And so he chose Saul because he was a very formidable warrior. I may get this facts wrong, but I believe Saul was actually either he was slightly taller than the average warrior or slightly shorter than the average warrior, which gave him an edge when fighting or something. I don't know how that works. But anyway,
I see what you're saying. I guess they chose Archibald just because, like, first off, I noticed he had that, like, thing that Darius was wearing in the first episode, but also just the fact that he did play royalty in the past. It kind of just made sense.
I guess they're just trying to make him the kingly figure.
Yeah. British accent. That makes you king.
But Saul is definitely not like that British accent character. He is a bit more...
dignified.
Aggressive.
Oh, no, not dignified.
Aggressive.
Archibald is dignified.
Yeah, he's a bit more aggressive.
Who in VeggieTales now, even looking past this point, who do you think would have played a better King Saul?
Oh.
Because I cannot think of one.
I mean, I can't think of right now who would be a good one because none of our characters are that aggressive, really.
Larry would have been too silly.
No, yeah.
He would have been aggressive.
Sure, but Larry wouldn't really make a good Saul.
Would have been an interesting
Because, you know, Saul disobeyed God a lot.
I bet Larry would disobey his parents a lot.
But anyway, so while they're introducing Goliath, they have a moment where the cup shakes with water shakes. And I thought, like, oh, okay. That's a reference to Jurassic Park. You wouldn't know that, but it's
actually, you know what? I did see that movie a couple months ago. I didn't enjoy it.
You did not enjoy it.
Okay, here's the thing. It's a very well done movie.
Okay,
I will give it that. But I just didn't like it because of it was just too much action, and plus with the cars being destroyed, just with my history with cars.
I see. Yeah,
it was just a little more traumatizing than enjoyable. So it's a very well done movie, but I don't like it.
Back to VeggieTales. Yeah, the cup shaking, nice reference.
I didn't catch the reference.
Of course, and you didn't. But we're introduced to Goliath, who is a pickle, and he's very giant in this one.
He's very giant.
He's very...
I just like that phrasing.
He's very giant in this one, which historically he would not be that big. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, he would be at least 6 feet tall or something.
But also the contrast of them with the peas.
Of course, and like nothing past 9 feet. Where this one is like, he's like the size of 2 buildings or something, roughly. But you know, it's also like to compare him against Junior, which I get it. But it's like, as a kid, I believed that Goliath was that big.
Yeah, I get that.
So I don't think that it was really an issue of telling the story about Goliath. I thought they got their point out. Like, Goliath was a bigger man. But I feel like too many times they'll try to make him way too big. When they do that, it's like, oh, okay, that's not actually how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Even though they don't actually give the specific size of Goliath. Generally, we don't have that big of people out there. But, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Then we go into our silly song once Goliath is revealed. And
I think it's one of my favorite silly songs.
I
love My Lips.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites.
It's just so ridiculous.
Sure, yeah. I think like you and CJ, like you know the lyrics more than I do, and it's like you can sing it off the bat. CJ definitely can sing it off the bat.
We should make him do that little like section, like when Larry's just like talking super fast.
One day
One day
he can do it. Very fun stuff. But yeah, very classic all of these Larry songs are classic, but this one's like, I know it, but it was never really my favorite whenever I watched it. And we go back to the story. Dave comes in, brings pizza to his brother, sees that Israel's not fighting against Goliath, and then he goes to King Saul and says, hey, I want to fight. And he starts to sing a song. Saul makes a very fun reference, which I'm glad that they put that in. It's like, wouldn't you rather just play your heart while I throw things at you?
So clever.
Yeah, if you don't know, David and Saul's story...
That's at least one Bible fact we know.
...goes on for so many more than just this. Because there's a lot, because David will eventually become the king. Yeah.
And then David puts on his armor, which they made it look really ridiculous.
Yes, and of course the armor isn't actually that metallic armor that you see medieval. It's actually... I'm nitpicking too much about actual historical facts.
Okay. What would the armor actually look like, though?
It'd be more like a leather armor, because they would not they would not really have metal. They would have more...
But, I mean, it was the king.
Even still, he would not have, like, that kind of metal armor.
Okay.
You really have to look at a visual of their warrior armor, because they're made in a way where it's like they can move.
I guess they had to like bring the perception of what people think.
And their swords are not too long.
That was a long sword.
No, like for Junior it was, but it was not really that long a sword. Generally speaking, I'm speaking too much, but David fights in the name of the god.
Not of the god.
Sorry, of God.
Gosh,
which
John.
is, like, I think, almost verbatim what he says in the actual story.
I mean, it sounds pretty similar. It's like there was the one part earlier when David was really, or Dave, was really upset, when he's like, how can you let him talk like this, mocking us as the children of God, and kind of just the importance of reverence of, the name of God, and that it's not necessarily something to be taken lightly.
Sure, yeah. And so David recognized his faith, and like, hey, God wants us to win. I'm the little guy. I can do this. So he goes. He finds stones in the middle of the water and just leaves them there.
Yeah,
I joke about that because he doesn't.
That's what it looks like. I think that scene always confused me too.
He always did confuse me as a kid. It's like, he finds stones, walks away. But no, he goes in against Goliath, where we had that boxing match, Goliath, which is the strange visual to have, but it's fun.
It's fun.
Let's give it some fun. But anyway, Junior does a slingshot, which they did it strangely with the slingshot this time, because they don't actually have hands. He uses his head to go whoo whoo whoo, which is it's fun visual to have. It works for this style. And of course they knock out Goliath.
Yeah.
This one, and everyone's cheering. They're throwing their hats.
And there was a graduation hat.
There was a graduation cap.
That was hilarious.
Which was, very funny,
Why didn't you wear that for the rest of the episode?
Because I threw the hat. Like,
fine.
we made...
Okay, fine. You're right.
Go
on. You're good.
I was making...
You're good.
You're good. I was making a joke. But anyway, we go back to our main characters.
Bob and Larry.
Yes.
Or Larry Boy.
And we're featured to the verse of the day, Matthew 19:26, which is, with God, all things are possible, which I think does a good job of explaining this story. Because... with God, David defeats Goliath.
I guess maybe I probably might have preferred I guess I know this episode wasn't necessarily about faith, but I think now, especially if we're moving into more topical stuff about this episode, I feel like it bounces quite a few different places. We talk about a bit of like faith in God, lightly. The fact that David was the only one who had the courage to do so. A little bit about the reverence to God, that's very back burner, but it's still mentioned. But also like the self-confidence aspect, especially when we're talking about like Larry and Larry Boy. Like, you don't need all these things. I guess referencing the armor part in the David story. Like, you don't need that to fight your battles. So it kind of like touches on quite a few different things. But I guess in the end, like, with that verse, actually, now that I think about it, kind of brings it full circle. Is that in the end, you don't need special things, right? You don't need whether it be special armor, special weapons. In the end, you need to be on God's side. Yeah. And that's the ultimate key and goal and way to win.
Anyway, what is the theme of this story?
Oh, I touched on those.
Okay.
You do it.
Okay. The story, I think, faith in God.
Faith in God.
Let's move. This is episode Hold Up. Specifically, does this message with this story hold up?
Like I said, I feel like it's a little scatterbrained in like some of the points that they were trying to make, so it's a little hard to narrow it down.
Sure.
It's a decent episode.
It's a fine episode. Like, I don't think it needed to be as long as it needed to, because there's some points...
No, I actually feel like this... Sorry, go on, Alf.
I feel like there's some things that's like, they're trying to tell this simple story a bit lengthy, because they include just things for jokes.
This is my thought.
Yeah.
I see that. I get that. But also I feel like, because we also watched Rack, Shack, and Benny in this point... I feel like they tried adding more filler with that one than with this one.
Of course, like this one didn't really have much filler.
This one did feel shorter though.
It's a much simpler story.
True.
As well.
So yeah, I do know that they added. If there weren't necessarily filler plot lines, there were more filler jokes. So, but I think it was surprisingly felt short, and but not necessarily I disagree or agree, but maybe it could go on shorter, but they want to hit that 30-minute mark, I
wasn't another point at this point in the story. David is like named to be the next king.
No.
Yes, because that's what Samuel was coming to visit them for.
That was before he went there. Samuel never appeared in this story.
Well, not in the David and Goliath story. But I'm just saying he visited before the David and Goliath story.
Before David and Goliath stuff. But I don't think Saul knew yet.
I think he did.
Did he?
Yeah, but like that's one of the big reasons why Saul doesn't like David, because like he knows he's my replacement. And so that's one reason why he's always trying to kill David.
But that was later on. This time...
I know it's later on, but do you think having it be known that David would be the future king is an important thing, or have it be labeled in the Bob and Larry section afterwards, saying this boy becomes king?
That would have been actually interesting if they did note that, because it would have. There's two sides I see to it. And on one end, be like, okay, yeah, so God can do amazing things with you, even though it doesn't seem like you're doing much right now. Like God can elevate you, but then again. The issue with that sometimes is that sometimes then everyone thinks that. Then everyone thinks that they're going to become a big, great, powerful person.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, I feel like there's just some people in this culture, especially today.
I think it's like, more so people...
You can be whatever you want, and if you follow your dreams, you can be whatever you want to be. You know what I mean? I feel like that's so many people. And I feel like... Obviously, it could be worded in a way where it doesn't come across that way, but I feel like, especially in the culture today, I feel like that's what it would come across more like.
Okay.
That's my thought on that. So, I do think, obviously, like, to end the story, because it is part of the story of David, it wouldn't have been bad to add. But at the same time, it wasn't part of the story of David and Goliath.
Yeah, if you're just telling this section, it's like, it's not... It is important, but it's not really important in just this small section. But in the grand scheme of things, if you were going to continue this story, it is important to note that David is the next king, chosen by God, and Saul does not like that. So. Yes. And so does this episode hold up? What do you think it works today?
It's a fine retelling of the story. I think that's where it holds up.
I think it's still accurate, but for the most part. I can't think of that many other retellings of David and Goliath. Like, this is, for me, the pinnacle, the ultimate version that there has been out there.
In the end, with VeggieTales, I feel like so much of it, though, is nostalgia. That maybe if it was released today, it wouldn't do as well. But because of when it did release and where VeggieTales has gone and what VeggieTales means to so many people, therefore, in the hearts of many people, it holds up. But maybe not to a new audience, though I could be completely wrong on that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like what I am finding interesting right now is that, like, on YouTube, there seems like there's been some sort of renaissance with VeggieTales of, like, people, like, discovering VeggieTales and watching it for the first time or something like that. I personally haven't really seen those videos myself, but I've been noting that there's been a handful of those recently.
And that's, of course, due to the revival of VeggieTales returning to its original form.
You think so?
I would say so, yeah. Because
I'm not going to argue
because
against
before that, it would be videos about how this series fell and how bad the new version is. But now that VeggieTales has come back, I think people are thinking of it more nostalgically, and that's why other people are seeing that and saying, like, "Huh, I wonder what this is," they're checking it out.
That's fair.
Any final thoughts you want to give here?
No.
Well, I think that settles it then.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.